Alrighty, a good morning to all of you out there. Hope you're very well. Today is Monday, the 27th of June. And you know, when it comes to the days, they really have flown by, eh? I mean, literally, before you know it, the month of June is over. And now we're looking at July. I mean, so exciting. Unnerving, but hey, in a good way, okay? And today I'm very excited because I actually have my wife back. Let me give you some testimonies between the last time that she featured and today, which is exactly 4 weeks ago. We got so much feedback. So many people were really blessed by her presentation when we discuss the issue of social, any feedback, different types of feedback, and these feedback actually led onto a radio show. There's a radio show that's called Shop Right with ShopRite, Listen Right with ShopRite, something like that. It's run by my dear brother and colleague from many years back, Tinta Chona, Patrick Chona, and Patrick came across the video that we shared. I usually share these videos like this one just after the show. And so if you're actually watching this, let me say this: if you're on YouTube, please head on to my page and make sure you subscribe, and then remember to click the notifications button and click be notified for all shows to not miss any copy. So anyway, back to this. So he was very keen, and he did get in touch with her and got through, and they had a very good interview, which is actually going to be shared on my page sometime this week as well as hers. So today we are picking up another aspect because we had a really deep conversation with some dear brother and sister friend of ours, Lucky, and the wife, Lillian Mizinga, who had come through. And we discussed, so as we were talking, we went on to a subject which is so deep, and that's the subject that my wife is going to be presenting on today. And we will then discuss it at the end. And that subject has to do with social identity, but taking on what we are calling the church and ministry dilemma, or the church and ministry conundrum, or the church and ministry fallacy. That's the name I've used there. And that's a very interesting angle. But believe me, when I go through this, you will be absolutely eye-openingly stunned. Why? Because you realize that there's so many people, even on this call today, no, maybe not on the call, but there's a lot of people out there who are suffering what we're going to be discussing. So according to Mrs. Mwambazi, social identity is the tendency to want to conform to the norms of your cultural background. So meaning you pick up an identity based not on what your true self is, but on what society dictates. And so based on that, you go on to live a life which I term hypocritical, because it's not your life. It's not who God called you to be. It's not who you were designed to be, but rather what society dictates that you should be. And so in discussing that, the topic of church and ministry came up, and it's really heavy. And so without preempting anything anymore, let's do the honors. And today I'm so privileged. Let me just move this like this, I think. There we go. So today I'm privileged to have on the call my dear wife. Let me see if I can move it closer. There we go. Much better. So there she is. So today we are discussing or picking up and continuing this topic, very, very touchy topic on social identity. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, everyone on Facebook.
Great, and those on YouTube as well.
And YouTube as well.
All righty, so let me, without further ado, allow you to jump on and pick it up. But of course, from the last show we had, there was so much feedback that was going on. So pick it up and just take it away, and then I'll come in after it. So let me do this so that we have you completely by yourself.
Okay, so from the last time I shared on social identity, like Rev has earlier alluded, you know, most people, I would say a lot of people are absorbed in the roles that they play, and they tie them to their identity. You know, a role is something, let me say, it's a pact that you say for a particular time and season. And then after, I mean, it comes to an end. So a lot of people tie their roles to their identity. And what tends to happen is that when you no longer serve the purpose of that role or title you are playing, you discover that you don't even know who you are. You have nothing tied to your identity because you were just playing that role which you thought was part of who you are. And like we had mentioned last time about social identity, well, it falls in so many spheres of life, because it also falls in marriages where you belong to this church, you're very faithful in this church, and they pair you, they couple you, and they think you make a perfect couple because of how much you are of good help and service to that church. So now you get married, which has nothing to do with finding out about what you're looking for in this partner of yours. Then you get married 3 years down the line, you find this marriage is not working. So that's also part of social identity. It also goes in workplaces, where last time I gave an example of myself where I thought doing a certain course, because of the job market that was there, I thought I could fit in that. I found myself doing that program, which had nothing to do with my abilities and capabilities. And I was depressed because I wasted a lot of my years doing something that I thought I was going to do when it had nothing to do with who I was. I wasn't being true to myself. So today we would take it to the church in the ministry. So you see, I mean, here you have somebody you look up to, you are indebted to them. I mean, they've done so much in your spiritual walk with God, and then now, because of how much you owe them, how much they've helped you to become a better person in your spiritual walk with God, you want to reflect their image in you. It's like you are drawn, you're mesmerized by this aura that surrounds them. So now you want to save. I would say somehow it's okay to save if you know what you're doing, if it's really in line with what your calling is upon your life. But most of the time you find, because of they're mesmerized by this aura about this person and so many things that they've done for you, they've helped you in your life, now they will pick that and they'll think you are caught because of how you've expressed it. So you start, they'll call you, they'll tell you, okay, maybe ministry is for you. And then you go on and think, oh yes, God has called me to do this thing. So you start saving, and then now you're left on your own, finally, you to run a church. And in that process of being on your own, you're kind of being a hypocrite, like Rev had said, because it has nothing to do with you. This is where you find you are into that ministry, you are bored. For a few years down the line, you don't even know why you're in that ministry, because you didn't hear the voice of God. God didn't call you into ministry. He's called you to do something else, but because you were so absorbed by what your clergy or spiritual figure has done for you in your life, and you just love all that they do in your life, you think, okay, I can do this. At the end of the day, you're so stressed. At times it even brings resentment because you hate these people so much. You feel that they manipulated you when they did not manipulate you. It was you brought it upon yourself because you thought you could reflect their image in your life. And now you're so stressed because ministry is not your call. God has called you for totally something else, something different. And you're just there for the sake of showing face. You're so depressed. When Sunday morning comes, I mean, it's a struggle to even come up with a sermon, because you find sometimes you have to Google a sermon. I mean, how bad can that be? Do you really have to go to that extent? It's because of the social identity. You wanted to be approved by your clergy that you are doing the right thing. So now you have this resentment over those people. it's not their problem, it's your problem, because you did not identify where your passion lies. You haven't identified who you are, and you just want to live by what society, your church circles are telling you to do. I think this is where now it comes to sunken cost fallacy. This is where I would want Rev Walter to take it on, because he's going to clarify what this sunk cost fallacy is, and he can go in detail based on what I've just presented. Thank you.
From where she had come in, and then we're gonna go a bit deeper. Your pointer, the one that really for me hits hard, is when you say you start to resent everything about what you do because you no longer feel it. And maybe you could clarify more. What do you mean when you say resentment, especially for those that are following?
What I mean is that you start hating your spiritual cover because you feel you were forced into that thing, but you were pretending to go along with everything, with the whole saving and being a disciple and all that. You were not being true to yourself, but because now they felt you're ready to run your own ministry, so now they throw you in the deep so that now you can express what God has put in you, because the picture you gave them is that God called you in that area. Yeah. Meanwhile, you were doing it. Because many of them
actually ask, isn't it? They
yes.
say,
are you sure? Meanwhile, you were doing it to please them. It was about them and just how much you love what they do. You love their ministry, and you feel you were trying to express your life through their lives.
Yes.
So now you hate them, you start resenting, you have this hurt towards them.
Sometimes, isn't it also that you have hate toward or dislike towards the work you're doing?
The work also, yes. It's also the work you're doing.
Yes.
Because it has nothing to do with who you are. You're not being true to yourself.
And so I think there's another component that's very critical. When success is not seen, and then there's that situation, doesn't then the disillusion become even more powerful? Okay, so let's pick it up. Sibo talked about the sunk cost fallacy, and I'm going to kind of go into this and explain to you what the sunk cost fallacy is. But just before I do that, Anne raises a very good point. She says, we are all in ministry, for the Bible says, whatever you do, do it as unto the Lord. I love that. You see, a lot of people think ministry is something to do with the church. Yet we know for a fact that ministry is a terminology. It just means service. Service can be in any area of your life. And Dorcas there says spiritual fatigue, terrible thing. Yes. Now, spiritual fatigue comes because you're doing something that God has not called you to do. So you're literally forcing yourself. Let me go into sunk cost fallacy, then this will really hit home. And by the way, just building on what you said, this is not just for church.
Yes.
This can happen in marriage,
in business,
in correct?
Careers. Yes.
What happens in those examples there? Maybe let's pick maybe career.
In career, you know, where you feel society thinks the job market for a certain career is what you need to do.
So they say, do engineering or
yes,
do
because
accounting.
You're going to make money. And it has nothing to do with your interests or passions or ability. So you go in there and do this career, and then you're so depressed in your job that you don't look forward to getting up in the morning, because it has really nothing to do with where your abilities are.
Correct.
So it's in all spheres of life, I would say.
Correct. So we just pick ministry because we know that there are so many pastors, apostles, bishops, whatever, who today would rather stop, but they will never do it because the whole society is looking out and they're like, what will they say if I stop?
Exactly.
And so that's what sunk cost fallacy is. For your information, sunk cost fallacy is whenever you let a past expenditure distort your decision-making process. Okay, in accounts, sunk costs in a business are expenses that cannot be gotten back, even if you choose to close or discontinue the venture, right? And these include, but are not limited to, rentals, registration and licensing fees, salaries and operational expenses like phones, internet, fuel, transport. Now, these are things that when you say, I think I've changed my mind, I'm not doing that business anymore. It's not like you can say, oh, give me back my money. No, those are gone. That's why they're called sunk costs. Now, whenever that expense is deemed very high, many people begin to suffer from the fallacy. We call it the sunk cost fallacy. Why? They become challenged with facing reality instead end up getting into a fallacious scenario. Fallacious scenario is when you are faking it. It's no longer true. Now you're doing things fakely because you realize, hey, so the cost of what you invested is distorting your ability to face the reality. So let's look at the three mechanisms. Number one, the waste not principle. This is the one where you say, but I've spent so much. I don't want to have lost all that time, all that effort. So let me stay on. So let's see if I can recover this. Let's see if I can turn this around. The second one is what we call the preference for risky gambles to certain losses. Instead of just saying, okay, this thing has failed. I think let's just call it what it is and move on. Let's just cut our losses. You keep putting good money after bad money. And then this is the big one, the justification of behavior. This is saving face. Because you are like, now if I stop, what will they say? I mean, how am I going to justify? First of all, how do I explain to the big apostle, bishop, pastor, father, whatever, papa, how am I going to explain to them that I think I'm wrong? They're going to say, what about all those times you told me your dreams and those prophecies? You see? So now I'm going to tell them that they were lying. No. So you'd rather pretend now. You just continue in this state of pretense. And I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's terrible. Because when this happens, there are two things you do. You start to realize. We call them the state of delusion or self-delusion. The first one, you feel a sense of grim determination. You sense like you die if you keep going on, but then you do it because of what I've just mentioned. You're literally feeling like, you know what, this thing is not working anymore. But you know what, let's just go on. So this is where now you start quoting to yourself, especially if you're a pastor. You start quoting to yourself Romans 2:12, 12:2. And that says what? No, 1, actually 12:1. Let me just quote it to you because, these are things we've been through. And so we know, when I tell you that I've been through this, I know exactly what it's like. You know deep in your heart that this thing, you should just pull the plug. But kuti don't say plug. So you say, let me just continue. And, I want to quote it. I know the scripture. I quote it all the time, but I want to read it. And let me read it out of the Amplified so that I really hit it home. I appeal to you, therefore, brethren, and beg of you in view of all the mercies of God to make decisive dedication of your bodies, presenting all your members and faculties as living sacrifice, holy, which is devoted, consecrated, and well-pleasing to God, which is your reasonable, rational, intelligent service and spiritual worship. So we use this wrongly to justify this sense of grim determination, this thing that, let me just go on, I am sacrificing, ministry is a sacrifice, I'll dare say that some people have even had heart attacks and dropped dead. Okay, and I'm liking what Anne is quoting there. I'm going to read it. Let me read it now, Anne, because I believe this show we're doing today, there are some people that are going to be delivered. In the words of Dr. Nelly, there are some people that are going to undergo mental deliverance right now because of the challenge. You see, and I like what Anne has said, so I'll come back to it. Anne, I'm coming back to quote this because it's so powerful. Then number 2, partway through a project, you realize that your project's likely outcome isn't valuable to you anymore. Okay, though it may have seemed valuable at first, you realize that it no longer is, and many times this is caused by warped values usually imposed by those you hold in high esteem around you, rather than what is true to yourself. So you really are overwhelmed by this massive charismatic person in your life, and rather than disappoint them, you'd rather die yourself. So you say, let me just continue. And let me just hit the nail on the head. You know, in a number of ministries and churches, we've seen people sent out and they literally begin to, you know, there's a saying that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And I know the Bible talks about God looks for those that are available. Sorry, the Bible doesn't say that. We say that. It's our own saying, yes. We say, yeah, availability is bigger than ability. So God is more interested in availability. That's true. But here's my big qualifier. It must be a true call. There must be a genuine love for God. That's why God loves a cheerful giver. You know, one who gives out of the abundance of their heart, not out of the abundance of their substance, but heart. That's why the widow was praised by Jesus. Jesus said, look at this poor woman. She gave more than all these rich guys because they gave in their abundance. This one gave everything she had. So she had more heart in her giving than those with everything. And that's why God is more interested in availability. So even though availability is a factor, it's very important that you love what you're doing. This is from the heart. It's a passion call. It's not a, oh my God, I love my bishop, is so powerful. This man, oh my God, this man, or oh my God, this woman, she's so powerful. So now you do everything as an act, isn't it?
Yes.
You are pretending in front of that person. But when that person is not there, or if they are not monitoring, or if they are not aware, you despise what you're doing. That, my friends, is what I'm talking about here. Somewhere down the line, 2-3 years down the line in ministry, you realize, wait a minute, this is not working. I was in the same boat. I'm going to give myself as an example. Now, the difference with me is what I was doing was working. That's the scary part. You see, we had reached a point with my friend where our ministry was at 700 people on per attendance. We had large numbers. We had so many people coming in to work with us in ministry. But deep in my spirit, I did not feel it. I did not feel it. And for me, it had to take a crisis in my life. It had to take going through a crisis where we lost our business, where we lost my spiritual standing, you know, my father in the Lord had issues, and then where I also lost my first marriage. When those things happened, there was a shock to the system. I was awakened out of this fallacy. You know, fallacies are so powerful, they become delusional. And when you're deluded, even when people are saying, Mana, this thing you're doing is not you, you say, what are you talking about? These are devils. Get behind me. Get behind me, Satan. That's what you do. Because you are deluded, you are clouded. Your decision-making has been completely messed up by the presence and decision of what you're doing. That's why people in cults, it takes a lot to pull them out because they are genuinely under a spell. And it's not like the owner of the cult is casting spells, although you could say so. But here I'm actually talking about a case where you are so into what you're doing, you begin to do what we call self-reinforcement. You self-reinforce your beliefs, you repeat them until you get into a state. This is the same thing we talk about when we're talking about how you can break cycles in your life and turn your programming around. So there's a way that you also can create cycles and lock yourself into a certain way of thinking. And this is a classic case. So you realize in the midst of it all that this is not your calling, but you force yourself. And that's why for some people, they end up with heart attacks. That's why some people, they end up with big problems. Now, somebody's written a long writing here. There it is. Tawonga has written something quite sensitive here. She says, I was this person who tried to please my parents when it comes to career and also people at large. Thank God that he gave me someone like Rev Walter who has put me on the right track. Also, these morning Zoom calls must never be taken lightly. I used to, and Rev Walter was never happy with me. Now I always look forward to the call, always do what God has called you to do in life, and it will be so much easier. Interesting, isn't it? What do you say to that, Tawonga, before I close with this? Any feedback to her?
Well, I think it's good that now you've realized where your interest and where your passion lies, because really it's, if you're living for someone else, I think you're not being true to yourself. You're self-saboting yourself. And that will cause you to be so miserable. Because I was in that boat. There was a time I just wanted to be approved and validated by what people thought about me. but it took time for me to realize that I wasn't being true to myself.
Yeah.
I was just doing it for people to see. It wasn't who I really was.
Yes.
So I think the best is to live for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why having a self-identity is the most important thing, because it's in that identity which it's where you know who you really are as a person, and you're able to embrace your uniqueness, and you live, it's connected to your passion, to your purpose. So you live for you, you're being true to yourself and not what other people think or dictate to you how you're supposed to live your life.
Nice. She says thanks. Mm-hmm. So you see, the third one also is you've paid for something you're no longer interested in. It's that simple. You pay for this thing, you think you love it, and you pay with your time, your effort, your whatever, and then you just realize, icon, this thing, I don't know, no matter how much I try to look at it, it's not working. And you know, that's the scary part, because what happens if it's a marriage? I really don't know. I'm not going to say anything on marriage because we'll be short. But we'll be short.
Too much peer pressure around. The peer pressure is just out of this world.
You know what I mean?
You'd think it's you only experience peer pressure when you're kids, teens, but no, it extends even into adulthood because of this trying to please people, trying to, so they can see I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
I mean, like, for example, on the marriage issue, and we should be winding up soon, on the marriage issue, there's so much pressure by our society that if you're not a Mrs., then you're not complete, isn't it?
Yes, it's so, like your role, your identity is tied to a title and the role that you play. So what happens when, because it's something, it comes to an end, certain roles and titles come to an end, then what happens when they come to an end? Does it mean you cease to exist as a human being?
And have you noticed that that's why we have this situation now we're noticing where ladies, when they hit their 30s, they're so desperate. Some of them are literally paying for their own weddings, paying for their own marriages. And then you get the famous Atiwanam Kwatira, meaning the man has been married by the woman, right? Because she's the career woman and everything. And I mean, then when they get in, they face the reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the reality they find?
They're miserable. I think that's the reality. They're just miserable.
Like whatever they thought and whatever is there are not the same, isn't it? So unmet expectations. And that's why we're saying, in closing, what is the way out of this? Number one, consider your choices. And this is a hard one. This is not an easy exercise, but it's essential. Listen to this. Look at every choice and its consequences and be 100% true to the most important person to your life, that being you. Remember, God speaks through you and will always place an inner witness within you called your conscience. That will always speak the truth to your heart. You cannot lie forever to yourself. Sooner or later, the truth does come out, okay? It is therefore imperative that you really weigh your choices and make a hard but critical decision. Is this really what you want? Is this really who you are? Are you really at peace? The Bible says, peace, my peace I give you, not as the world gives it. So the sign of being out of God's will is lack of peace. It's that simple. That's always the way. Pain is a sign you're out of God's will. Is it God's will for this finger to come all the way back and touch here?
No.
So if you try, you know what happens? Pain, isn't it? Exactly. When I learned this a long time ago, it really helped, because some of these things to do with God's will, it's not some mystical thing. God, tell me your will. No, it's already in you.
It's already in you.
You already know. You know in your heart, and that's the part. May God just teach me to listen more to hunters, and that's the reason why I have a wife like this one, because these women are very intuitive. They may have their own issues, but intuition, God has blessed them with it. If your wife tells you, I'm not feeling this, and then you and your daughter, you go on, every man on this call can admit what happens.
Including yourself.
Yes, including myself. That's why I'm saying it. You've said so many things, and I've said, what does she know? And then, vafwauk. So in short, what I'm saying is your wife can become one of your best, how can I put, litmus test of whether you're in God's will or not. And if something is not working, please consider the choice and make the hard decision. Call a spade a spade. Face the music. Then number two, focus on the future, and we finish. Instead of looking at the past, ask yourself this very hard but necessary question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now if you stay on that path? Already you know things are rough. Ask yourself, 5 years from now, where will I be if I continue? Do you really like the possibility of what you could be? Is it a realistically achievable situation? What if you chose the path you prefer? Do you find yourself fantasizing, very important, fantasizing about a reality far from what you are in right now as a means of escape? So are you using that thing of picturing a future different from now as a fantasy to escape where you are now? My friend, if that's what you find yourself in, you're in problems. And I like that Auntie Dorcas says peace is key. Absolutely, Auntie Dorcas. Peace is the first sign that you're in the midst of God's will. Even if there's storms around you, if your heart is at peace, you say, you know what, I'll do it. That's why people in ministry who are genuinely called, no matter how hard the road, they will endure. But if you are not called, when the road gets hard, you will get into a state, I tell you, and you wonder, why did I even do this? Me, I don't think I was called. And that's why you start blaming. And sometimes it's so bad, you end up going back to your pastor, back to your people and saying, you people, you are the ones who forced me. You know that, huh? Yeah, you're the ones who forced me. Me, I wasn't interested. We forced you? Yes, you forced me. Me, I wouldn't have done this thing. Shock. Can't you see you were lying? You were not telling the truth. If you just told the truth, it would have been better. So my closing remarks, and Sibo coming, okay, I think Sibo, do your closing remarks, then I can close and then we call it a morning.
So my closing remarks is that stay true to yourself.
Nice. So some people say, but how do I know I'm true to myself? You know you're true to yourself by seeking the face of God. The Bible says that, do not be anxious for anything. In other words, don't fear or have anxiety, but by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be known unto God. Also in the book of James, it says that those of you that want to know the help, need the help of God, you just ask and don't doubt. You'll be free. And Anne says, the truth shall set you free. And let me read Anne's passage, very powerful. Whatever may be your task, work at it. No, let me change it back to NKJV. You know, they always extend it. Okay, so it says, verse 23, very, very nice verse. It says, and whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men. Knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. But he who does wrong will be repaid for what he has done, and there is no partiality. My honor. So in short, if you are doing things for human beings, my friend, you will be very sad, because human beings forget, human beings overlook, human beings are petty. Human beings who have issues with you, just because they don't like you, they liked you, you were a favorite, you were in everything, then all of a sudden, they dump you. So are you going to stop going to church because the pastor has stopped focusing on you? So you need to make sure you're serving God, even if nobody, wants you. Serve God. And Sylvia says, in business, it's worse. Be real. Yes, Auntie Sylvia. Yes. And then Chilambo says, you know what did she say there? She said something very good. She said, this message is so on point. Good teamwork, Mr. and Mrs. Mwambazi. Great coaching. Ngoza says, in ICCP course, we have learned your inherent gifts is easy to do. You enjoy it and you can do it for free. Exactly. It's true. So to all of you, as we close, be real. And if you find yourself in a situation, you see, Tawanga is saying, please come back very soon. Yeah, she'll come back. She was putting a message together. It's not easy. So you see, so you should
it's
come
not
back.
Easy being on this course.
Yeah. So don't look down on anybody who comes on this course. Dr. Nelly puts a lot of people on the call. So it's very important that you make sure you're true to yourself. Ask. If you don't know, ask. Go to mentors. Have what we call a come to Jesus talk. Go meet your mentor or pastor or bishop or larger than life person, your parents, whoever they are. Go have a come to Jesus talk. Many, many, many on this call. And I mean this one now. This one I know. You are afraid to go and face the people you look up to and tell them, sorry, I'm not going to do this. I don't feel it. You are afraid to do that because you fear that you will offend them. But let me tell you, the one losing out isn't them. It's you. I really want you to hold on to that. So go have the come to Jesus talks. They are not easy, but they are necessary. Tell them what you feel. Tell them what you want to pursue. Yes, it will hurt them, but it will bless you. Alrighty, so from us, thank you so much. Tomorrow,
Thank
Tuesday,
you.
we have Auntie Sylvia, as usual, doing her thing, and I'll be there in McKinney with her in the later on. And then Wednesday, we have Anne, and then Thursday, we have Dr. Nelly, powerful as always, doing her thing. So to all of you, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll share this
Have
on,
a good day.
share it everywhere. Share it. Bye.